Hi, this is Josh Buden for HolderManager.com. In this video, I will analyse one of the most useful but underused HUD statistics, the probe turn stat. This stat is defined as the percentage of the time your opponent bets the turn after you raised pre-flop in position and did not continuation bet the flop. At first glance, this seems like a turn statistic, given it gives information as to your opponent's turn tendencies, but in reality it fundamentally governs your flop c-bet strategy. A lot of weak opponents view a failure to c-bet as weakness and will automatically bet the turn. Accordingly, you should adjust your c-bet strategy to exploit your opponent's probe turn tendencies. If your opponent has a high probe turn percentage, you should start checking back some medium to strong hands on the flop some percentage of the time to induce turn bluffs and to get your opponent to incorrectly value bet too wide on the turn. You should also look to c-bet your pure air hands a higher percentage on the flop, as you will be unable to delayed c-bet turn given how often your opponent will be betting turn as the first player to act and thus taking initiative away from you in the hand. The corollary of this is if your opponent has a low probe turn percentage, you want to bet wider for value on the flop, as you are unlikely to induce bluffs on later streets given their low probe turn percentage, but it also gives you the option of checking back some pure air hands on the flop and delayed c-betting them on turn, given your opponent isn't going to take initiative away as often on the turn. Remember that sample size is very important in gauging the statistical significance of the statistic. So the higher the sample size, the more likely it is that the statistic accurately represents your opponent's true tendencies. The probe turn percentage generally converges fairly quickly. I would say once you've got 100 hands on your opponent, you've got a pretty good idea of how they're probe betting. But the problem is you have to click on the specific statistic to see how many opportunities they've had to probe bet and how many they've taken, because obviously you're only going to be in position half the time in heads up and you're going to be c-betting a bunch, so they're not going to have the opportunity to probe turn that often. Now, if we look at the hand in the HM3 replay here, just as an example, we've raised Jack 6, 7, 5 double suited pre-flop and got a call. On the flop, we can sometimes c-bet this hand. There's a lot of bad turns for us. Any 8, 9, 10, king, queen changes the board, and an ace as well. Very dynamic board texture. So against someone with a high probe turn percentage, you want to sometimes check this back and look to induce bluffs. Against the hands with little to no equity, they're not going to really improve on many later streets. As you can see with the exact hand our opponent has, he has basically no equity in the hand. Whereas against opponent who can check raise for value, even though we block some of the value hands that can check raise, it's going to be difficult for us to play on later streets. Now, this guy's probe turn is only 67. If we click here, it says he's taken 2 of 3 opportunities in the 73 hands to probe turn. So already we're getting a sense that he probably does have a reasonably high probe turn percentage, but we'll have to look for maybe another 100 hands or so to get a really good gauge. In any event, regardless of that statistic, it is good some of the time to mix in a check back here, because we can be disguised when we hit a full house. They'll never put us on that hand, and we allow him to bluff turn. So we get to the turn after checking back, and he pots the turn. So here we can see we still have very good equity against his hand, and we'll be looking to hero call some rivers. On this river, I'm surprised that he did give up and didn't elect, because he doesn't really have much showdown value with the 7 in his hand only. He probably should be repping the ace, given we check back the flop. He has more aces and 2 pairs and full houses in his range. Anyway, this also gets me to the point about taking notes. You must use the HM3 note-taking function to take a note on whenever your opponent gets to showdown when they've probe turn bet. So you can see what type of hands they probe turn, whether it's just pure bluffs. If they bet turn give up river, as this opponent did, that's very important information, or whether they automatically double barrel. So you want to gauge if they've got a polarized probe turn statistic, value bets, very strong value bets and bluffs, or if it's more mixed with semi bluffs and wider value bets. So in summary, the probe turn stat is a very powerful tool that fundamentally contributes to your flop c-bet strategy, and will assist you in maximally exploiting your opponent's tendencies.